Hi guys, welcome to Football Unspoken, the home of unique football takes. Now, let's get to the episode. So we're going to get straight into it today. What I want to talk about actually is Kaka and Ronaldinho, some players from the past. So getting into the trivia question for today, can you tell me what year Kaka won the Ballon d'Or?
When obviously pre Messi and Ronaldo going mental, so I'm gonna go 2005.
Well, it was a good shout. It's 2007.
Oh, you said 2006. I was gonna be really upset because I actually thought 2006, but oh well.
Interestingly, Ronaldinho won it in 2005. So
Okay, I just confused Ronaldinho and Kaká. It's fine. It's okay.
So where that takes me into the actual topic for today is, what I want to ask is, as two different things, but were Kaka and Ronaldinho actually that good, if you look at the modern day footballer?
Right, so I'm gonna go in an interesting way, and I mean, they were. It's as pure as simple as they were. I think Ronaldinho, in terms of pure control and skill, is the greatest player that world football's ever seen. He's better than Messi, he's better than Ronaldo, he's better than Neymar. With the control, the touch, the skill, it was just silky. But the one thing he was is he was I don't. It's harsh calling any professional player lazy, but he was just a bit of a lazy player. You know, it was when you're that naturally talented, you don't really have to work as hard as everyone else, and you could kind of see that in the way he played. Whereas Kaká, I think, is one of those who was almost the opposite. He didn't. He never looked as silky on the ball. You know, at least what I remember watching him, I might get a million blows coming in saying I'm chatting nonsense. But from what I remember of him, there was never the silky kind of control, smoothness that you see out of your Messi's, Neymar's, Ronaldinho's. But he worked so hard. His vision was exemplary. When he won that Ballon d'Or, his vision was ridiculous. He saw spaces that guys couldn't see. He saw spaces 5 minutes before they appeared, kind of thing. In terms of defenders' movements, he knew where a defender was going to be 2-3 minutes before the defender was there. Or at least that's how it felt. So I think I think in terms of the modern day footballer, that's a different question. But in terms of were they as good as they remembered, I think 150%.
So one of the concerns I've seen people saying online is around, clearly they were skillful players, but did they have quite the end product? Because in the modern day of football, that's where things have gone. We've had lots of episodes talking about how it doesn't look as good anymore, but the goals are coming with more regularity. It's more robotic. Where I think a concern with those two players in particular and other players of that time was how they looked really good, but how many goals and assists did they really, contribute? Now, I realize this is an unfair question to ask you because I didn't give you an opportunity to research that, but just from your memory, do you think that's a fair accusation that they were all flash and no end product, or do you think that's chatting bonnets?
If anything, I would say you probably have a better. I don't think you've got an argument for either of them, by the way, but I think it's a better argument to have a Ronaldinho than of Kaká, because Kaká won the Ballon d'Or not because he was flashy, not because he beat a million players, not because he was a one-man team, but because he linked everything together and he was so spot on, as a linking player. And then he did have a couple of goals. He had a couple of absolute screamers in him, and then in terms of assists, again, I unfortunately I haven't looked into the actual numbers, but I remember Kaká being a bit of a monster with the pass, and that's why I say the vision. The thing I remember about Kaká was vision. It was he was a vision player. Whether that was him dribbling, him passing, him shooting, he always just saw the game in a different way when he was playing, when he won that Ballon d'Or. And I think to accuse him of not getting the numbers is a bit unfair. Ronaldinho, I'd say, again, you probably got a bit more of an argument there, because for the natural talent that man had, he should have been pulling Messi numbers before Messi was there. But again, I say, it's harsh calling any professional player lazy, but in terms of it, it's just a bit lazy because he could rest on the fact that he could walk through a team with almost no effort at any point in time. So I think that probably skewed his numbers in a negative way. But I just think we spoke about this in a previous episode, but stats have just become too big a thing in football. And I preferred watching football for the enjoyment of watching football. I preferred watching Ronaldinho in the corner trying to beat three players. I preferred watching Ronaldo in a corner stepping over the ball and making defenders look silly. And I preferred defenders going in hard on these guys when they did it. Like, sod it. If a guy's going to go into a corner and prance around, go through him. 100% go through him. And I just think now that stats and Pep Guardiola's style of play have kind of taken over, you're starting to lose this individual flair. And a good example of modern football, I think, is Jack Grealish. There's this idea that Jack Grealish has gone to Man City and have become a better all-round footballer. And that's probably backed up by stats, by the fact that like he's completing more passes, he's completing more dribbles, he's getting fouled more, he's getting more. I don't know if he's getting more assists actually, but like in terms of all the little stats, he's doing better. But I miss the player that Jack Grealish was at Aston Villa, where you just didn't know what you were going to get. You knew it was going to be good, but you didn't know if it was going to be. He's going to crack a screamer in from 40 yards. He's going to dribble through 8 different players and get a penalty. And I think stats have kind of become a part of football to the point where they're starting to lose your Ronaldinhos and the excitement that you get out of those players.
Yeah, I need to stop you there because I don't want you going ahead of my next question. But I do want to come back to some of the Kaka and Ronaldinho stats because I'm a stats man and I do still enjoy that stuff. So just quickly on Kaka, I think his most notable club was AC Milan. If you don't agree with that, then you probably didn't watch much of prime Kaka. But interestingly, so he played 307 games for AC Milan, scored 104 goals and had 81 assists. So that's basically a goal or an assist every 2 out of 3 games, which was pretty good. I mean, that's really good. And then Ronaldinho, you'd probably say his best club was either Barcelona or, probably Barcelona, I'd say. So his stats there, 207 games, which surprised me. I thought he played more games for Barcelona than 207. So 207 games, 94 goals, and 71 assists. So that's almost like 2.4, 2.5 goal or assists per 3 games, which is really like half a game he wouldn't goal or assist per 3, which is pretty nuts. So actually, I tried to catch you out with that question, and you were a bit ahead of the time. Then you knew that they still had good goals and assists. But going into your Jack Grealish thing, what I was going to actually ask you next, and you stole my thunder a little bit here, was there's this discussion or debate around how the Brazilian national team, particularly looking at the Copa America this year and whatever, has lost that natural Brazilian flair or tradition that the team used to have when it had players like Kaka and Ronaldinho, etc. And it was all about those flair players out wide or in the middle, going on dribbles, doing exciting stuff. There's almost been this Europeanization that's taken place to the Brazilian team, as so many of their top players, I know their top players were always playing in Europe, but there's almost like their top players are now playing in these systems that, as you said, are all about how many pass completions do you have and short dribbles completed and how many possessions have you lost in a game. And there's a lack of interest, as you say, in that flair side of the game. So I don't know, I think I know your answer, but do you agree that the Brazilian national team has had this like negative innovation, or you think that's also people just scratching at random things?
I think it's a two-pronged thing. Firstly, I'm going to say every single national football team will go through periods where they just don't have the players. Is it Endrick who's starting for? Is that his name? Who's starting for Brazil up top? 17 years old, 18 years old, however old he is. Might be 19, but that's your leading striker, starting striker. Yes, he might be fantastic, but I'm sorry, you can't be Brazil and having a teenager leading your line. You know, no matter how fantastic he is, you always think of Brazil having these fantastic attackers, and I just think they're in a low point in terms of talent, which sounds really harsh because they're still Brazil, they're still fantastic, you know. But I think you look back at these teams with R9, Ronaldinho, Roberto Carlos, Kaká, these even Neymar. Like, I mean, Neymar's getting older now, and he's not as prevalent realistically because he's unfortunately just keeps getting injured. It's just a reality of getting older. And I look at the team, and there's just not the excitement of that 2003, 2004 Brazil team, where you just look around, you're like, there's just game breaker after game breaker after game breaker. So I think there's probably a bit of a natural element to it where they're just in a bit of a low period, and it will come back to them because Brazil has such a huge footballing culture. But I do also agree that there's definitely been in football, there's been a Europeanization, as you say, of how football works, and you see it in how African teams are playing. You see it how a lot of the South American teams are playing it as well. They're drifting away from what their natural strengths are towards this stats-based style of play, this Pep Guardiola style of play, because that's what's brought success in the biggest leagues in the world, on the biggest stages in the world. And I just think national teams need to understand where their strengths are. And you know what? Gareth Southgate, we gave him a bit of a bollocking in our last episode, but you look at the facts of Gareth Southgate, and he's played to the strengths of his English teams. His English teams have realistically, they've had good attacking players, but they're not flair players. They're not all-out attack players. His best players have oftentimes been very good CDM, very good wing backs, and very good centre backs. That's what he's built his play style around, and he's gotten to multiple semi-finals and multiple finals, and could add a European if they win tonight. So there's ways that national coaches have to play to get the best out of their teams and the best out of their nations, and I think Brazil is probably one of the ones who needs to find their flair again. They need to find the beautiful football that we kind of associate with Brazil.
Yeah, nice. Very last thing for me, because I don't want this to go on too long, but very last question for me would be, do you think then Ronaldinho and Kaká would play for, let's talk Premier League terms, I think that's the easiest way to slot it in. Which teams do you think in the Premier League they would be starting for?
There's not a team they wouldn't start for. Realistically, there's not a team they wouldn't start for. I think Ronaldinho is a player who, he brings something different at the end of the day. And obviously, he played for Barcelona at a time where Barcelona were in their prime. You know, I think he would walk into Man City, and Pep Guardiola would do kind of what he's done with Erling Haaland and go, "You're so good that you just do what you want, honestly, mate. Like, we'll feed it into how you want to play, because that's how good you are." And as for Kaká, he could replace any central midfielder in his prime. He could replace any central midfielder and do whatever he wanted, realistically. So I think there's an element of managers probably needing to fit them in, but they could walk into any team. It's that easy.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think this has been a great discussion around Kaká, Ronaldinho, the Brazil national team, where that's all going. Bit of Southgate thrown in there as well. You know, we were got a variety of topics here, which I really enjoyed. So hopefully you guys enjoyed taking a listen too. And if you have an opinion on any of the above, we'd love to hear it. Until next time, this has been Football Unspoken. Cheers.